Joining us now, world famous lawyer from Atlanta, Lin Wood. You know him from the Richard Jewell case. You know him from just getting a settlement from the Washington Post. He's filed suit here in Georgia, and he's with us now. Lin, thank you for being with us today, sir.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. You're probably overlooking my home in Atlanta in Peachtree Park.
Well, I am. We're on the 17th floor here. I can wave to your house, and when you get back, we're going to have you on live so we can follow this up. Lin, tell us about the lawsuit you filed, and what exactly is it, and when do you think you're going to get a ruling?
The lawsuit I filed was against the Secretary of State and other appropriate defendants, and it stems out of a March 2020 consent settlement that the Secretary of State entered into with in litigation with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was represented by Perkins Coie. You might also call Perkins Coie the Hillary Clinton law firm. But that consent agreement made substantive changes in the absentee voting rules. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. Only the state legislature is permitted to make a change in a federal election conducted in the state. That's been strongly suggested and will be upheld eventually by Justice Alito in Pennsylvania, even recently by a judge in California where they tried the same thing with the governor. So they changed the rules under the guise of COVID to try to increase the ability of people to vote by mail. And as a result, you've got fraud of a massive amount through the mail votes, and you've also got fraud in your computer voting machines. It's not the first time they've done this. What happened this time is Trump won by such a large margin that they had to go out and get these mail votes in the middle of the night to try to carry some of the key states. Mm-hmm. But in Georgia, the election is void and unlawful. It's going to work through the court system unless the state legislatures take action in advance of the courts. Because the election is void, there's going to have to be a new election. They can't do it for the president. They're going to have to do it through the Electoral College. But every down ballot contest is going to have to be redone. There's not going to be a runoff. There's going to have to be a new election.
Wow. So, look, I just had Senator Brandon Beach on, state senator, who's called for a special session, and he said the same thing. He said, Lynn, that the General Assembly, which is the only entity, according to Georgia law, that can make this change, he said the deal that Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, made with Stacey Abrams on this mail-in ballot scam, if you want to call it that, he said they were not ever even told about it. Like, it never even went to them, or they would have said, hey, you can't do this. And now they're asking for a special session, and the governor's nowhere to be found.
The governor's nowhere to be found because the governor of this state, and I don't say things lightly because I do a lot of defamation work.
Yes, sir.
Since the Richard Jewell case. So I don't like people making false accusations about someone else. The governor of the state of Georgia is corrupt. The lieutenant governor, I don't know about, but he certainly has been quiet, and he certainly, the only time he spoke out, he said there was no evidence of fraud. Talk to the people in the state of Georgia. That's a lie. Raffensperger is corrupt. You can always follow the money, and there's a lot of money that went down when the Dominion voting system was purchased by the state of Georgia in 2019. Follow the money. There was also a lot of money that went down when Governor Kemp bought COVID supplies, masks, gowns, and COVID test kits from China. Follow the money. There's also an interesting money trail before he appointed Kelly Loeffler as senator and after her appointment. Mm-hmm. Follow the money. The governor of the state of Georgia is corrupt. He's compromised by China money. And that's why you don't hear him out there fighting for the people of this state right now who are going to be outraged, and they already are, because they know that Trump won this state by a landslide. He won the country by a landslide. may have won all 50 states. And they're trying to steal our government because they're going to change our government. You're going to wake up in a few months and you're not going to have the United States flag over the White House. It might be the China flag. This is their effort to overthrow our government.
So, Lin Wood, you believe that Trump, let's just focus on Georgia for a second, and then we'll go to some of the other states. But you believe that Trump won Georgia in a landslide. And how did they get these mail-in ballots in there in the middle of the night? Like, how did they do that, Lin?
They changed Georgia. They had algorithms planned in for what they thought they would need in terms of the votes. Those were baked in the computer voting system.
The Dominion software.
It's Dominion. The system actually works in any voting machine because it's a software that affects the vote tallies, all of which run through a company called Seidel, and then Clarity, who reports them. They bake that in the computers, and then they had their fail-safe mechanism in the mail-in votes. Mm-hmm. I know people have written me from all over the state mm-hmm. where they got 3, 4, 5 paper ballots. The Secretary of State should have sent one for each member of the voting roll. Mm-hmm. The Secretary of State didn't send them. They were sent out of a company in Arizona. Why would that be the case? So you had people that were now, I could sit down and I could get a paper ballot. I could sign my name for the request and my name on the ballot. Then I can take 50 more paper ballots, sign someone else's name for the request, sign somebody else's name, the same person's for the ballot, the vote. The signatures are going to match. But it's not an actual voter that's signing either one of them. Mm-hmm. Now in this recount, they're counting in the illegal votes. They don't even have, and they're not looking at the signatures on the request. They claim they don't need to look at the letters where they came from, where they're postmarked. They're just counting the actual vote. They're going to recount the same fraud that came up in the initial election. Somebody's got it. If you wanted to go the hard route, you'd have to do an audit to parse out the legal from the illegal. You would find them. That's why they're trying to rush through under the guise of, we're going to do an audit, canvass, and recount. They're just doing a recount. Secretary of State's lying to you. They also had people that did not allow Republican spotters to watch the vote tally. They made it difficult enough when they imposed the 6-foot rule. But if you had a mask, you could sit there. In Fulton County, at the State Farm Arena, under the guise of saying everybody's tired, let's go home, the Republican spotters went home at 10 and 10:30. The counters came back and they counted votes for 3 hours. Thousands of votes could have been changed and miscounted during that 3 hours in Fulton County alone. They claimed that it was a water main break. Find out what happened. You're going to find that there was a urinal that overflowed in the arena that morning that was fixed within an hour. The citizens of Georgia are being lied to. Mm-hmm. They're being lied to by their governor. They're being lied to by their Secretary of State, maybe others. But there's been a big move to disregard what happened to the presidential election and focus on the runoff. You're not going to win that runoff because people that voted for Donald Trump know that something was done wrong. They're not going to bother to go be fooled again and vote in that runoff. And ultimately it's not going to be a runoff. It's going to be an entire down ballot revote.
So if it's a down ballot revote, then what happens to the presidential ruling? By the way, we're with a famous noted attorney, Lin Wood, who has filed suit in federal court in Georgia over the potential, or what appears to be, a rampant fraud that went on in Georgia. So, Lin, when you look at this, you're saying that a judge is going to say, hey, this election out, right? Whoever won, out, all over again, got to start it over. But what about the presidential?
The presidential is covered by the 12th Amendment, so that the state legislature will actually make the decision on the electors and who the electors will vote for.
Mm-hmm.
So the presidential election can be decided in a constitutional framework by the state legislature. Every other down ballot vote's got to be redone. And there's time to do it. They can set that up. I tell you what they ought to do. They ought to go in and do what we used to do. You ought to go in and vote on a paper ballot, sign it, and that's it. Don't run it through a computer system where a seventh grader can hack it. It can certainly be hacked by people that are experts in this area, that are in the business of selling elections, starting out of Venezuela. Several different countries have had it happen. They used the system in 2012 with Obama and Biden in Florida. They used it in 2016, but they didn't have the mail ballots, and Hillary Clinton probably did not win the popular vote in 2016. They used it in 2018 to carry the House illegally, and then they went for the big one in 2020 because they got to take Donald Trump out. Donald Trump won in every state, I believe, a massive landslide win. And if they think they're going to get away with it, they're not. What's going to happen is the people in this country are going to rise up because they know that it's been done wrong. They know they've been cheated. They're not going to sit for it. They're not going to stand for it.
And so
they ought to be in it. They ought to be knocking on the door of the governor's mansion. If they can find where this fellow Raffensperger lives, they ought to be knocking on his door. Mm-hmm. These people are dirty, they're corrupt, and they're trying to steal our election, and they're caught because they can't do otherwise because they're compromised, and so they're not going to buck China.
So your lawsuit, okay, so let's get to the bottom of this because I'm understanding everything that you're saying, but we got to have a win someplace. So your lawsuit, what do you expect to happen here? Give us the timeline.
The timeline will be determined. We're going to obviously move for an expedited review at the trial court level in the Northern District of Georgia. I believe that the court will rule correctly because the law is black letter clear. Only the state legislature can change the rules. Now, I'm sure they'll try to appeal that, or if we lose it, we'll appeal it. The 11th Circuit will say you can't do it. If necessary, the Supreme Court will say you can't do it. It's got to be done by the legislature. So the Georgia election is going to be thrown out. I am 100% sure of that, and as a lawyer, I rarely say 100%. Lawyers like to hedge their bets. This one is a slam dunk. So the state of Georgia, the citizens can decide whether they want to be put to the expense of what's going to amount to frivolous litigation by the Secretary of State to use their tax dollars to try to defend a clearly unlawful election because he wants to cover his rear end because he's dirty. I hate to say that about somebody, but it's true, and I don't mind speaking the truth. I'll guarantee you that Brad Raffensperger and Brian Kemp would never sue me for defamation because they know I could prove that what I'm saying is true.
So, Lin, we're going to get this ruling, right? And then the Georgia election is nullified. The presidential election goes to the General Assembly. Certainly they're not going to seat the electors for Biden under this guise. So Trump is going to win the 16 electoral votes in Georgia. But then what you're saying is they're going to have to throw the entire election out, which means Congress, Senate, council people, supervisor, whatever, that all gets thrown out. And you say there's going to have to be a brand new election for everything down ballot. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what you're hearing, and that's what will have to be done. And I believe, even though I will tell you straight up, I supported Doug Collins. I believe that in a fair vote, Doug Collins won well over 50%.
So then
you're not going to need a runoff after when you get a legitimate election in the state. They led you to believe there was going to be a blue wave. All the polls had Biden up 10 points. Those polls were lies. They were setting you up with the idea that Biden's either going to win or it's going to be close, so that you would accept the idea that, oh my gosh, Biden won because nobody likes Trump. That is a lie. This country voted overwhelming for Donald Trump.
So are there, after Georgia, Lin Wood, are there other lawsuits similar to this that you're going to be able to file to get a similar type of a result?
I've only filed in Georgia because I filed with standing as a Georgia voter who voted in person.
Got it.
So I had to go through an authentication proceeding that was more stringent than the absentee ballot procedure set up by Raffensperger. Mm-hmm. That's a violation of my equal protection. Mm-hmm. But I'll be able to set the standard overall that the election was unlawful. That's going to happen, and it's happening in other states. It's happening in Pennsylvania. It's happening in California. And I would venture to say that any state where some legislature did not make the change, but a governor or a secretary of state made the change, it's going to happen there too. Mm-hmm. I don't represent the president. I don't represent his campaign. Mm-hmm. But I'm working with the lawyers that do, and I know for a fact that with time, they're going to show that the corruption was not only in the mail votes, it was in the computer voting system.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about that. I'm going to stretch here a minute, Kara, over our time while we have Lin Wood, because time with him is valuable and short. Tell us about the software Dominion system and people saying that it's a barcode system. Votes were changed. Even in Virginia, we had a count where it comes in and Trump's vote goes down where Biden's goes up because we've never seen.
Happened.
What is the integrity of this system? Explain that to us, Lin.
Well, if you want a brief description of the integrity of the system, I would say there's none, zero. We outsourced our voting systems.
Lin Wood, noted attorney. You know him from Richard Jewell case in Atlanta. You know him from the big settlement he won for the Catholic school and the young fellow against the Washington Post recently, and many, many others. He's filed suit in federal court in Georgia, and it's pretty amazing thing that's gone on. And Lin Wood predicting that the Georgia ruling, the election will be overturned. The presidential electors will go to the General Assembly. That'll be decided there, and there'll be a new election. But Lin Wood, I want to ask you about this. I got a bunch of texts here from people. They said, ask Lin Wood about this Dominion software. Did they indeed change votes?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. The evidence is mounting. We've got sworn affidavits. We've got video sworn statements. It originated out of Venezuela, and then it worked its way over to servers in Frankfurt and Barcelona, where a company called Cytel was involved, reporting through a software system developed by them, where they changed the votes. Cytel was bankrupted in May of 20, even though it's made up of very, very wealthy owners. And then it was purchased in October of 2020 by a company called Paragon. The ownership of Paragon is fuzzy. Could be China, could be George Soros. The bottom line is they developed years ago an ability to use this software to determine the outcome of elections. They've used it in different countries, Chile, Argentina. They're now using it in the United States, and it's not the first time they've used it. So they have the ability to go in and switch votes, which people saw happening in real time on television. 560 votes all of a sudden down from Trump, up for Biden. It happened all over the United States almost simultaneously. They build it in with an algorithm to build in a vote switch amount, and then in Georgia, they added the safety net of the mail-in ballots. COVID was a real flu. It was not a pandemic. They used it to force the idea that you should vote by mail so they could bake in the fraud on top of the computer system with the mail-in votes.
Lin, Lin Wood with us, noted attorney, filed suit in Georgia. Lin, a lot of us were shocked when we were following, because I did election night live, and we really couldn't figure this out. So I'm doing it live. I'm in D.C. We got our panel there. We got all the computers on, and a couple of states, Virginia being one of them, where Trump, we get an update, and the Trump vote total would go down. And like, I'd never seen that. And then I saw it one time, and I'm like, okay, well, they just inputted it wrong. But then we saw it in All the states. Like the vote total would, like you said, it would go from X to X minus Y, and we're like, boy, that's a lot of bad inputs. And then we're thinking at election day, well, maybe the Trump vote was so big that they were just overcalculating them. But then the problem with the Dominion machines is there's always supposed to be a paper trail. Well, there's no paper trail because it's a barcode. So you don't know what the barcode says, right? That's foreign to you. So I could have voted for Trump and the barcode says Biden. I put it in. I didn't know that, right?
Absolutely right. Now, whether that was done, I highly suspect that it was. There were several different areas where they baked in the fraud. Makes it harder to find, but we're going to find it. I think you're going to find it in certain areas of the country with the use of the Sharpie pens. But the bottom line is they had software that controlled the ability to flip votes. Mm-hmm. And then they had the mail-in ballot that opens up the door wide open for fraud. Mm-hmm. They changed the system in Georgia to make it easier for someone to vote by mail in terms of the lack of verification of the voter. There's no verification of the voter in the mail-in ballots in Georgia. All they claimed they were going to do was to match the signature on the ballot with the signature on the request. No photo ID. No matching of the signature with the original registration card of the voter. Mm-hmm. When I voted in person, I had to sign in. I had to have a photo ID. They ran my signature in comparison to my signature on my voter registration card that I filled out some time ago. They didn't do that with the mail-in ballots. So I had a more stringent verification so they could know that I was the person voting. You don't have that in the mail-in ballots.
So, Lynn, that's like a two-tiered voting system. Isn't that the same lawsuit they've got in Pennsylvania that you can't have two sets of rules to vote? Isn't that? I mean, that's not.
It's the
lawful.
Same. It's the same theory. And I believe in Pennsylvania it was done by the governor. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is, Alito has already made clear that they're not going to allow that to happen. Changes can only be made by the state legislators in a federal election. Can't be made by the governor. Can't be made by the Secretary of State. As I said, they claimed that it was done under the guise of the need to vote by mail because of COVID. Mm-hmm. COVID was the cover. Mm-hmm. But let's assume that there was a need, which I don't believe in time people will know that they'll realize there was not. Let's assume that COVID did require change. It had to be made by the state legislatures. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's unlawful. It's going to be thrown out.
So what is going to happen? Okay, I really understand where you're going with Georgia, and I think you're right. I think there's going to be, based on what you said, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. There's not going to be a runoff between Loeffler, Perdue, Ossoff, and Warnock. I think there's going to be a whole new election, which is probably going to help a couple of the congresspeople that got beat. The one in the seventh, I believe, was only a few hundred votes or a couple thousand. It was close. So there's a new election. What happens then on January 20th? If all this plays out, Lin Wood, in your best judgment, January 20th, somebody has to get inaugurated. What happens?
It's going to be. I believe it's going to be. I believe it's going to be Donald Trump, without any doubt.
That he's going to put his hand on the Bible when this is said and done.
Absolutely. He won probably 70% of the vote nationally. And as I said, I think he probably won, if not all 50, almost all 50 states.
So when do you think you get your first Georgia ruling, Lynn?
Well, we're going to try to take action today to get a hearing set. We're obviously at the whim of the court when they'll hear from us, but I think that the court will hear from us on an expedited basis, and we could have a ruling within a matter of days.
In the meantime, the Raffensperger phony fake recount audit, which is completely fraudulent, it's a farce, it's a clown show because they're just recounting the same fraudulent ballots. Does that go on? So they're going to recount and say Biden won and jump up and down and say, see, there's nothing happened. It's all accurate, right? That's what they're going to do.
That's what they've been saying. I even saw last night where Raffensperger came out and said that the recount won't change the vote. Mm-hmm. How do you know that when you haven't even finished the recount? But he knows that because they're recounting the fraudulent votes.
Right.
They need to have a paper. They need to pull those. My machine printed out a paper ballot that had a barcode on it when it went into the scanning machine to calculate the votes. Take a look at those paper ballots.
Well, they're not doing that. They're just counting the barcodes.
Exactly. And they're not even doing it with Republican spotters being allowed to oversee what they're doing. It's mass confusion in Georgia on this recount. It's not chaos. It was planned.
Raffensperger scammed it. He scammed it because he said there was going to be an audit, but this isn't an audit.
He said there was going to be an audit, a canvass, and a recount. He lied. He's doing a recount, and he's recounting the fraudulent votes. There's not a mechanism in Georgia right now where they're first trying to determine the legal vote from the illegal. That's where they should have started if they wanted to legitimately verify this election. They won't do that because they know that the legal votes were overwhelmingly in favor of Donald Trump. The Secretary of State of Georgia, I'm going to say it again, is corrupt. The governor of Georgia, I'm going to say it again, he's corrupt. Follow the money. Why do you think Brian Kemp's been so quiet? Why isn't Brian Kemp, a Republican, out fighting for the citizens of this state who are reporting in mass numbers the irregularities that they experienced firsthand by the number of paper ballots they got in the mail and other irregularities they've seen? Why isn't Brian Kemp standing up for the people of this state? That's because Brian Kemp is dirty.
Well, here's my other question. Senator Brandon Beach, Republican, North Fulton, Cherokee, moderate guy, establishment type senator, outraged like you were by the whole thing, demanded a special session because he says, look, what you just said. He said, first of all, the deal that was made between Raffensperger and Stacey Abrams was totally illegal. He said the General Assembly was not even made aware of it. They don't have the authority to do that. He also wants a special session, he says, because the same type of corruption is going to go on in the January 1st runoff. Then he says we have this vacation loophole that Democrats are saying, hey, come in, play golf for a weekend, register, vote, and leave. We'll pay your expenses. We'll put you up in our home. We'll cook you dinner. We'll take you for a round of golf. We'll take you to St. Simon's Island, whatever. So he said, we need a special session to put language around it, bring attention to this, and also to deal with the fake deal that Raffensperger made unlawfully without the General Assembly with Stacey Abrams. And Brian Kemp hasn't responded. He's got 10 senators who signed it, and the governor hasn't responded.
He's not going to respond because he's got his own I imagine Brian Kemp's trying to avoid going to jail. He's worrying about himself. He's not worrying about the citizens of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in for a dime, in for a dollar. They're going to ride this out and hope they can pull it off. They want to certify the Georgia vote. It should never be certified.
How do you stop it?
Oh, the state legislature's got to stop it. I'm doing what I can in federal court. Other people could take my complaint, change the name of the plaintiff. Mass numbers of people could file that same lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
The legislators could file it. Mm-hmm. But the state legislators have got to demand, as does the people of the state of Georgia, that Brian Kemp do his job and call a special session. Only Kemp can call it.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't call it, people in this state will not tolerate it. I'm not going to say they're going to burn down his house because I wouldn't do that to incite violence, but they're going to burn down this fraud. They're not going to sit back idly and have an election stolen from the people. So people have got to get on the phones. They got to get on their emails. They got to get outside and protest civilly, nonviolent, civil disobedience. They got to go out and they got to protest and demand that Brian Kemp do his job and call a special session. I would put maximum pressure on that man. He will eventually have to fold. And then it is what it is about who bothers to investigate what he's been getting and putting in his pocket. Same thing's true with Raffensperger.
Lin Wood, thank you for your time. Outstanding information. We're going to have you back here live when you get to town. And I'm going to be your opportunity to get this out to the masses, because certainly the fake news here, the Atlanta Journal and everything else, is not going to carry any of it. We're launching the Georgia Star News on Thursday. You'll be in that. You'll be in our Virginia Star today. We're trying to get a radio station here, but I got to tell you, Lynn, what you just said has got to get out. I got to get this out today, and I really think you're onto something, and you certainly opened my eyes. Because again, I just can't believe why Kemp wouldn't call a special session. I just can't believe it. And when you got people like Brandon Beach, this guy is not, he was on today again. This is an establishment Republican, Lynn. He's not a Doug Collins fire breather, right? Transportation guy, CID, and he's beside himself. He's like, this thing is totally corrupt. We need a special session. They went around the General Assembly. The whole thing's illegal. They never told us. He's demanding, but yet the other day I had Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones on the phone, and she had a much more tepid response. So we don't really need a special session. It's a waste of time. Nothing will happen. A judge has already ruled on it, etc.
There's corruption at the local, state, and national levels in this country. And I think you'll find that it goes back to what people don't want to talk about. Mm-hmm. This is the communist playbook. Mm-hmm. But let me make this point. I'm not a partisan. I voted for Democrats and I voted for Republicans.
So have I.
I supported Trump in 2016 primarily because I couldn't stand Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. I thought she was corrupt. She is. I voted for Trump, and I was a big supporter this time because he's the first person that's ever gone into office that did exactly what he said he was going to do. Mm-hmm. He would have gotten health care but for John McCain, who was deep state, sabotaging that vote. Donald Trump has been portrayed as one thing to demean him. He's the opposite. Donald mm-hmm. Trump represents and cares for the people. Mm-hmm. The people of the state of Georgia have got to step up, whether they're partisan or whether they're nonpartisan. They've got to stand for truth. Mm-hmm. If Joe Biden won this election honestly, then this country will accept it. But he did not. This country will never accept it.
Lin Wood, I want to give out the office of the governor, Kemp's office. Call him up. I'm going to give the number. Also, we're going to get it tweeted out. If you could do that for me, Kiara. The number of Brian Kemp's office to demand a special session. If you live in Georgia, don't call if you're from out of state because that's not relevant. But if you live in Georgia, 404-656-1776. 404-656-1776. Let me give it to you again. 404-656-1776. Call the governor's office. Demand that he hold a special session to get to the bottom of this. Lin Wood, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you for being with us, and we'll look forward to having you here live in our War Room studio right by your house when you get back to GA.
Thank you very much, and keep the fight going. We're not going to allow our freedoms to be taken away from us.